Welcome. Tony Smith here with the Mike Ferry organization. Thrilled as always to spend any time with you about important topics that we're dealing with in the real estate industry. One of the benefits we have of being in the Mike Ferry organization for over 50 years is we get a chance to see pretty much everything. And we get a chance to see the incredible successes that people have. We get a chance to see some of the tragedies that real estate agents or brokerages will go through. And one very relevant topic today is we get to see what happens in natural disasters. And it doesn't matter if you're up in the upper East Coast and you get frozen. It doesn't matter if there's tornadoes in the center part of the world, or if we have hurricanes down in the south, or if we have, snowstorms in Houston, Texas, or what we're dealing with today are wildfires on the west. So I have brought in three of what I would call the legends of real estate today that have been through this type of thing. And I thought it would be a good idea if we could share some of their thoughts, some of their insights about what they've gone through in their history when it comes to natural disasters that show up from time to time. In some places, it's not a matter of if it's going to happen, it's a matter of when. So if as a real estate agent or a real estate broker, you're more prepared for it and you have some ideas, you may not only just survive it, but you'll actually thrive on the backside of it. So we've got three incredible agents here with us today, and we're going to talk a little bit about their thoughts that are happening or have happened when they've had one of these situations in their company. So first and foremost is Mr. Josh Barker. Would you tell everybody who you are, where you're at, where you're from, and a little bit about that, what you experienced in Reading?
Sure, yeah. So Josh Barker, real estate broker, been in the business for 25 years. Helped about 8,000 families in our community. And about 5 years ago, we had a pretty large fire that took out about 1,100 homes in our small community. And that same evening, we lost probably 12 or 15 of our existing listings that we were servicing at that time. And so, there was a whole lot that we had to learn real quick about, how to serve the public in that moment.
Mm-hmm. And so this was the first one that I remember where it was a big deal. Like your town's on fire and
Right.
you're losing listings, and it's
Yep.
just a real tragedy.
It is.
Yeah. So what are some of the takeaways that you had post and during that event that you could help with?
Sure. I think the first thing is that we had needs that we had to meet immediately. So we had existing listings and sales that were taking place, and some of those homes were burning down. So we needed to do an inventory right away of who was affected by it. We found some housing. I called a property management company, asked them how many rentals they had available. They had like 10 at that moment. I said, I'll take them all, because I could tell that we were about to need to help find places for people. We only ended up filling, I think, 8 of them. And then, I didn't end up paying for that. The tenants ended up paying, but they were grateful I'd already lined it up for them. So we called them up and said, hey, I know you just lost your home. I've already got a place lined up for you. Here's who you need to call. And so, so you're taking care of those immediate needs. And then after that, it was about getting communication out to the marketplace about, hey, here's what is going on. First of all, there's rent protections in place. Whenever you have a state of emergency in a community, the next thing you're going to find is all the rents are going to want to inflate immediately. Well, there's laws against that in California, at least. And just educating the public on that fact kind of brings down some of that temperature or some of that thought that somebody might try to do that. And then, next thing after that really is just to make sure they understand what's to come next, because it takes a while to get the insurance to kick in. It's not happening overnight. And so you're trying to help them understand that there's a process that they're going to have to go through before, they're going to be able to really get to work on their home. But I'll share. I'll let somebody else share a little bit more on that.
Yeah, for sure. So next we have Ed Kaminsky, who is right in the middle, the back end of the fires that we've had in the Palisades and Altadena area, and we've been watching the tragedy nonstop for the last couple of weeks, and it's still kind of in the middle of it. But Ed, it just seemed like he jumped right into action when it came to helping the citizens and real estate in LA. So what have you taken away so far?
Well, the catalyst of jumping in was it all started to happen. And honestly, the first day, I almost ignored it. Mike's taught us, just don't watch the news, don't read the paper, just go do your job. And I kind of had my head down. But about 24 hours into it, I woke up mad. And I was mad at LA, I was mad at, the people that were in charge of, that potentially allowed it to happen and could have created better measures to reduce the impact of those fires possibly. And everyone's blaming the wind, but there are other things that I think could have been done to solve that issue. And so just being mad in that morning, I just said, you know what, I got to do my part. I can't just sit back and ignore it. I can't sit back and be angry. I need to do something. And so that was at like 6 in the morning. And I just brought together our team and every resource that I could find to build what we call the LA Fire Donation Center.org, and built a website, depleted our office of furniture, made it a donation center. In between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m., the site was built and our office was full with donated items. And then I had to source a trucking company that offered to move all this stuff for free to the right distribution centers. And part of that morning was interviewing my assistant. And my assistant lost her home about 1.5 years or 2 years ago in a landslide. And I said, what was the process? What was day 1 like, day 2, day 5, day 17, day 60? And she explained the needs that changed. And so starting to understand how she goes, all I wanted day 1 was a sweatshirt and a pair of jeans so I could just be dressed and go do what I had to do. And then a couple days later, she goes, my phone kept dying. I just wanted a portable charger for my phone. But then she goes, I wanted to get online and start finding resources to help me. So I needed an iPad, right? Her house fell down a hill. And so the challenge for her that's different with the fire victims is a house falling down a hill is not insured. So there's no resources. So we quickly then looked at fire situations, what we were dealing with, and discovered quick resources that they could have. One I found the most important was SBA will give an immediate loan if someone needs a loan, and they don't want to wait for the insurance company to give their money. And so we'll give a loan in a disaster situation. $100,000 if you're a renter, $500,000 if you're a homeowner. So we provided that resource. And then educating the victims of what to say and what not to say to their insurance company to ensure they get the right claim money back. And that is becoming critical right now in what we're dealing with, and providing law firms and advocacy groups that can guide them in those things, because you could screw up your claim very easily. Insurance companies don't want to give you all their money.
So what do you do with the team in the middle of all this? You've got agents
I
that work there,
required
you've got production and
I
all
didn't
these things?
I asked for volunteers, but usually when I ask, they say yes, and they've been so supportive. So they're volunteering when the trucks get there to unload the stuff, get the word out there, and provide housing relief for those that need it. So I've asked, I just want to know who would volunteer to do leasing services pro bono at no cost. Every single person raised their hand. So we're just trying to be matchmaker for the tenants that have been victims and find homes for them.
Excellent, excellent. So now we have Mr. Mike Darda in Fort Myers, Cape Coral, Naples area, and your topic is hurricanes.
Hurricanes, yeah, a little different type of disaster than fires, in the sense that when we got hit with a Category 4, actually it was only 5 miles an hour short of a 5, so it was a strong storm. We had between 13 to 17 feet of storm surge in the community. So needless to say, everyone's house was flooded, and nobody's experienced anything like that in that community ever. The difference with a hurricane, though, I mean, even though you know it's coming and everyone evacuates, but it basically wipes out all your services. So you do not have phones. You do not have electricity. In many communities, you don't have water. So you are pretty isolated. So yeah, just my number one thing, and I actually learned, first off, I just immediately thought, okay, I'm not going to go do this alone, right? So I reached out to Josh. I think was like the first person I called, because I knew you went through the fires. I reached out to our good friend Jeff Quinton, and I said, how was it in Sandy? What did you do in Sandy? And I just reached out to a few people I know that have been through disasters in the Mike Ferry system, and some great advice, Josh, that you gave me was, number one, take care of yourself and your mindset. And the way I did that was something that you taught me, Tony, and that was every day I did a gratitude journal. I did 10 things that I'm grateful for in my life, and then what 3 opportunities are before me at this moment. And then after taking care of my own mindset, then the focus was to take care of family and friends. So once I made sure my kids were okay, and my family was taken care of, then we turned our attention to the team. Let's make sure the team, and it literally, because of the communication, it took us, I'd say, a good 4 or 5 days before we got accounted to where everybody was at, and that everybody was okay. Some people maybe a little longer. And then of course, then we turned our attention to our clients and existing and past clients. So that was the order of, how to take care of things. And I learned a lot also, don't go it alone. So I actually reached out to some of the Mike Ferry agents I knew in the community, and we set up a daily call at the end of every day, a group call, to say, okay, how was your day? What did you learn today? And what's your focus for tomorrow? And we just helped each other learn best, what was working, what wasn't working, and how to get through it. But getting that office reassembled as fast as we could. If your office survived whatever disaster you're going through, that was important. Our office did not survive, so we had to actually get emergency office space, relocate, reassemble the team in that space, just so they had a sense of normalcy, a place to go. And it wasn't just for the team. Then we found, well, heck, we got internet, we got AC, we got food. And so we started inviting our clients, our past clients over, get on the phones, call them. Hey, you need internet, you need to get a hold of your insurance company and work stuff out, come on over, use our offices. So we found that to be a good tool.
Excellent. So, I watch it on the news only, so I haven't experienced it, but it seems like a lot of predatory people come out on the backside of these things.
They do.
And it's, you can hear these messages, you see these messages, people trying to buy up the properties, buy the lots or whatever. What was your approach to that?
Yeah, it's actually a bigger issue than you think, and I think that's an opportunity in a bad situation to really position yourself as the expert for your customers in the market, because you can really start to share with them some of the policy that's there to protect them, some of the rules and regulations, but understand that cleanup is not go fast. In most of these situations, it's FEMA that's going to have to come in and clean them up. So you have to do an assessment of all of these properties that are destroyed, damaged, burnt down, or hurricanes or whatever, and they have to analyze it. And then there's this huge long period of them getting cleaned up. And sometimes the property owners have to make a decision about whether they're going to come out of their own pocket to do this cleanup, or if they're going to fall into a larger group of people funded through the state or through the federal government to clean it up for themselves, right? So it takes time. Like the LA fires are going to take time. I mean, that's going to take a year, and they're going to be trucking stuff out to the desert to get that resolved. In our case, it was about 45 minutes away that we had to truck that away. But the customers have to understand there is real value to those properties, and those lots are actually worth more than they are as a lot prior to. And the reason why is because when you build a home, you take out fees for school fees and permitting fees and square footage fees and sewer, water, electric connection fees. All those things have already been paid. And so when the house burns to the ground, you still have all these fees that you've already prepaid, which causes the lots to be worth more. And a lot of people miss that, and that's part of that education process. You want to get out there in front of your customers and say, hey, look, you may not have decided what you want to do. But before you do anything, what you think you might know about the value of a piece of property, you may be wrong. And make sure they get educated on it in advance. So that would be one thing I bring up.
We're seeing the two sides. One is rent increases, and the law in California is you cannot increase cost of anything by more than 10% during the state of an emergency. So if you were clearly advertised in December of 24 at one price and a different price post-fire, and it's clearly more than 10%, you're going to get accused of rent gouging. And so a massive movement happened very, very quickly, monitoring different real estate platforms of where that happened and notifying the DA, and they said it's a criminal offense and a civil offense, which means you go to jail and pay a fine just for raising your rent. So really educating from our side, not just the tenants, but the homeowners who are trying to raise the rent and say, hey, slow down. You don't want to do this. You're putting yourself in a jailable situation. And then the poachers will call who like, hey, I've got money, I want to buy land, I want to buy it cheap. And my team is saying, we don't want to help you right now. Not until the properties can be fully assessed and properly marketed to expose it to the entire marketplace, not just Johnny Billionaire who wants to write a check really quick.
Yeah. Have you experienced it too?
Yeah, we didn't have to go looking for those poachers. They all came to us. They would start ringing your phone. But we took a little different approach to them. We actually made a list of them all. And we decided, okay, there may be a need for actually some of these investors. There may be people that want to take them up on their offer. So So we actually immediately began a postcard campaign where weekly we sent out postcards to all the affected areas, because there's really three options. They can either rebuild, or they could, take the insurance money, sell as is, or they could, scrape the house and have the lot. So we put the postcard out with those three options and say, before you do anything, get a no obligation assessment of all of these options, and so you can decide which way is right for you. So that actually, we did it from a spirit of wanting to help. It wasn't just, hey, look, what's the opportunity there? But we ended up, it was a very effective campaign. We found that we went going on multiple appointments a day, and then giving them an honest assessment. Okay, here's what your property's worth as a lot. Here is what it would be worth as is, and here's what it would be worth if you rebuilt it. Whatever's best for you. We're not here to tell you what to do, but we can. And that we found, it was very interesting that pretty much anybody that was like over 70 years old almost always took the insurance settlement and sold the property as is, and they were just done. But
Can I ask a question?
Real quick on the investor piece,
Yeah.
we sorted that group out, and we sorted out we learned who the sharks were, and we learned who were the investors that had a heart, and the group that had a heart we did work with, and we said, look, okay, here's an opportunity. So we actually didn't bring them one offer, we would bring them multiple offers from multiple investors.
Yeah.
Well, and you guys are mentioning it in terms of cost of construction, because cost of construction prior to an event like these is different than cost of construction post. And that's because the demand for labor, the demand for supplies and materials is going to start to go up. So a lot of folks will find themselves underinsured, because if your house burns down and you're the only one on the block that burns down, you're properly insured. Why? Because there's no major impact on labor, no major impact on materials and supplies. But if you lose all of these homes in a geographic area at the same time, now you're tapping labor, now you're tapping materials and supplies. And so a lot of people find themselves, at least in the short term, underinsured. Which means that they may not be able to rebuild that home that they had before because of that insurance, because they're underinsured. So that's a part of what I think Mike's probably leaning to too, is part of that evaluation is to try to figure out, like, can you even rebuild what you want? Because a lot of folks, they'll find themselves that they can't.
So the question being asked, certainly for me to be able to advise people properly, I'm 2 weeks in. You're 6 months out or a year out. I don't know how long ago the hurricane was, but did the value that you assessed immediately after the hurricane change 6 months later, 12 months later, as things became a little bit more normalized?
Yeah, and I can tell you what happened in our market, and a little bit of that is what's your market doing at that time? Is it trending up in values, or is it trending down? Well, ours was beginning to trend down before the event. So it was fascinating to me how much more people were paying for these properties than I believed they were worth. And because there was so many properties being sold, there were literally comps that we can just use, based on the condition of their home. And so we were very clear what it really was worth and what someone would pay for it. And as time went on, I'd say it was maybe 6 to 12 months later, 12 months later for sure, I saw that the people that bought the people that bought like a week right after the disaster got the best deals, as far as if you're looking for a good deal on a property as an investor. But then the people that paid later actually ended up paying probably more than they should have. And then because those properties were selling for less a year later that were as is damaged properties. Because some people were still fighting with their insurance company, and at some point they just said, forget it, I'm selling it as is. And I noticed those sales were lower at that time. I think it's just less demand. There was less people circling around, trying to buy them at that moment.
Did you see the same thing?
Oh yeah, I was thinking for you, Ed. I mean, what's likely to happen is that in the short term, you have the people that have the financial provisions to buy a house immediately, like Mike is saying, where they'll come out a week later and just buy another house.
Yeah.
And you'll see some homes similar to what burned down in the Palisades being sold in Manhattan Beach.
Yeah, that's exactly what's happening.
And then what'll happen then is after the insurance starts to pay out, now you're going to start to see this really big increase in purchases as they realize that, hey, wait a minute, I'm not waiting 2 years to rebuild that house, or to the point I made earlier, I'm underinsured, I'm going to have to go buy something instead. Then you're going to see another pretty big increase in sales and productivity around that geographic area. And to Mike's point earlier, what will happen then, down the road even further than that is, if prices don't catch up with it, you might see a stall out later.
Right.
But for customers, when you're talking to your clients, and you're saying, hey, these are the things you should be expecting. I mean, talking to them about whether or not they could potentially be underinsured is a big deal, because time back to the market to buy another home is going to be really important to them. Because if they wait too long, they could be priced out, especially in LA.
Yeah.
You can get priced out of LA on accident if you leave for 2 weeks.
Yeah, for sure.
So I think it's something to be talking to them about.
So it's easy for all of us to say, you guys have very established business. How long have you been selling now?
25 years.
25 years.
37.
37 years.
38.
It's 38 years. So it's easy for those of us here that
glad
have been
I'm
at
a
it a
rookie.
long time. You're the youngster. Yeah, easy. And so I could see someone sitting that just has they're a salesperson in a company and they happen to be affected by it, and their production isn't 25 to 40 years in the business with a real established thing. What advice would you give to somebody who's just an agent that's experiencing this right now?
Well, I think the good news is that you're in real estate, because and what I mean by that is that it's great that you set up the distribution center and everything else, but the public usually has a lot of good resources available to them for getting clothes and water and things. They're good at that. What the public or the government's not good at is finding housing for people. We're really good at that. So I would tell an agent that needs to, hey, I want to contribute, get on the phone. Start calling everybody that you know and ask them, hey, that second home that you're not going to spend a lot of time in, is this a good time for you to sell it? Because I'm sure there's a lot of families who would benefit from you bringing that home to the market now. And so be proactive about participating and finding housing solutions for people, because that's truly where an agent can make a difference right now.
It's what's happening in our office right now, that our agents are calling their clients and saying, can you help? And then the conversation, can you help because you have a second home, you have a rental property, we need places for these people to live. And then the conversation naturally moves into, should I sell my house instead? Because I was thinking about it and maybe this is the time. And then those are turning into listings. So if you lead with trying to help, which we're all working hard in our office to do, yes, opportunities will present themselves. It's just karma, it's just good energy. You put it out there, good things will come back to you. Yeah.
Mike, what are your thoughts?
I agree with all that 100%. The one thing you don't do is you don't stop doing your job, because you're needed more than ever. And so yes, come at it from a different approach, one of that there's a need in the community for housing, and therefore when we had our agents calling, and they were asking, look, do you not just is your home available, but do you know of a home that's available for rent or for sale, or we didn't care which, right? Period. Is it a functioning, surviving house? And then so that helped the agents get back on the phones and doing what they do best, and it was serving the community. I guess it also pulled the office together. It kept everybody on the same mission, so it's good all the way around. Yeah.
So I've gotten that, come from the right spot, massive action, communication at a high level, become the resource for everyone that's there, right? Our job is our job, and keep doing our job. Now that we're post these events, any observations about, since you're past that now, and what would you do differently? Anything that you noticed where you made mistakes in it?
I think just early on learning the value of properties post-fire. Understanding that, like I said, the underinsured, that was something I didn't even realize until you lost a whole bunch of homes, because your house was insured fine with one house burning down, but not with 10. And so I think that was an eye-opener for me. I think it was also just realizing that we do have a huge input on how the community responds by just how we project ourselves in the market. If we tell them people it's going to be okay and here's some solutions to the problems that people have, I mean, that goes a long ways. Somebody needs to speak truth to people.
I'd say I was really impacted by how many people really want to help, but they need a guiding light. Because I asked who is willing to volunteer in our office. They all raised their hands, but none of them knew what to do. Yeah. They needed to be guided in what to do. So if you can be the guiding light and start some plan of some sort, there's so many people that want to help in a situation, they just need to be guided on where to help.
It's excellent. Mike, for you, post-event?
Post-event, I would say, one thing, know that a great recovery is coming behind this. There's a ton of insurance money coming into the community. There's going to be a revitalization that's occurring. It may, depending on the scope of the disaster, it may be years, but it's really, in the long term, it's going to transform the community. And the other thing I would say is that a couple lessons that we learned: keep your vendor lists up to date and super current, because we were sharing vendors, but then our vendors were getting overwhelmed. So we quickly, you don't want to be sharing bad vendors that can't even return a phone call. So we learned to really rely on our clients. Like, okay, when they said they had something done and it got done fast, I'm like, okay, who was that? What's that company? I want to add them to my list. I'm taking that other guy off. We became a service for our clients in that regard. I think going forward too, one thing I'd like to do is do an updated disaster supply list that we can send to our clients. Like, here's the things you should have on hand for disasters, and maybe here's a list of things to do, like during the disaster or whatever that might happen. I can tell you, for me, I'm going to add like a Starlink phone to mine, right? Because I had no cell phone usage for a while. And then the one last thing I'll say, depending on the scope of the disaster, if it's not like a huge one where everybody got affected, understand that when you're calling people, they're all going to be affected differently. And so one of the lessons we learned is keep calling, because you may call the guy's house who has 0 damage, but absolutely wants to sell because of whatever this disaster is, which of course creates an opportunity for someone to get an undamaged home, and you create a solution for 2 people instantly.
Oh, that's great. Well, I have to tell you, we could go on and on about this. We feel fortunate at the Mike Ferry organization to have salespeople like this that have been around us so long, and stand-up guys that will do what they need to do. For those of you that are in the middle of it, being affected by it right now, you might want to watch this a couple times, see if you can do that. But we all will rise up from this, and I think we can all learn something from these gentlemen today. So thank you guys all for your
Thanks,
time.
Tony.
Thank you. Appreciate it.